All right, welcome webinar listeners. Thanks for joining in another Shop Talk. This is episode 31, where we are talking with Joe Hailey. Joe, thank you very, very much for joining us today and taking the time to be with us and tell us all about your story.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Of course. So for everybody coming in and attending, check your audio and make sure everything's working all right and you can hear both of us. We don't have any kind of presentation for this webinar. This is just Joe and I talking and telling you all about Joe's story, how she discovered Matterport, and where she's taken it and how she's made a real success out of it. So with that said, the questions panel is always open, as it is with all of our webinars. If you have questions for Joe, myself, about whatever it is that we are talking about, please go ahead and throw them in the Q&A. We'll go ahead and focus on the questions later on, but if we see them, we'll certainly go ahead and address them as they come in, if anything does get flagged. You may notice that we also have Charmaine with us to help with questions in the back end for anything that is not necessarily specifically for Joe. All right. With that said, let's get cracking, I guess. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Good, thanks. You?
Fantastic. So we were talking, and I know you discovered, I think Matterport was back in 2016, I think. Was it that long ago?
I can't remember actually.
Was that
I was in San Francisco at the Google Street View Summit, having lunch with Kurt.
Right.
Is he?
Right. Yes, you discovered Metaport through Kirk, or a mutual friend, and Kirk told you all about Google Street View and how that's coming out for Metaport.
Exactly.
Before we get into Metaport, you do Google Street View photography.
Exactly. That's how I started my business in 2012. I was already taking photos, but mainly at festivals and not for money, really. Just enjoying getting in to see the bands close up. And then a friend on the South Coast found that Google was launching Google Business Photos, as it was called at the time. So I applied and jumped through all the hoops and found out I was quite good at it and I enjoyed it as well. So that was great. I had half the equipment. And I became a Google trusted photographer. I got some great work through it, actually. A national contract with a tire firm. And then later 2015, Westminster Abbey, of course, my little claim to fame. The top performing female Google photographer in the UK, and the company is one of the top 10 companies. So, Google recognized us as being quite prolific with what we were doing.
Nice. With Google Street View, other than like something, pretty spectacular like Westminster Abbey, most of your work was focused around small businesses, basically. Is that something that...
Yeah, location-based businesses. So to extend Google Street View inside location-based businesses to get them more local exposure, to enhance their Google My Business listing, and to familiarize people who are looking for business of that type with the business, which then encourages them to come inside and buy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Is that, just out of curiosity, is that something that Google helped connect you with these stores, or did they just say, go do your thing?
Some, there used to be, and I just went in the other day, and I think they're taking it out. There used to be a button in Google My Business back end that said, get Google Street View inside, and people would click that. And then if it was in the local area and we are listed on the website, and we're still listed on the website, then they would contact us and come through. So that's where Westminster Abbey came from, to be fair. And I did check with them because I know they've got a special collections team. But they said, yeah, good to go. You can take that one. Mm-hmm. Really pleased about that. And then various others, from leads that aren't so great, and people just pressing it because they want to find out what happens when they press the button. And actually, they've got a window cleaning company and they don't have premises. So some and some, but it's like any business. You get your leads and your inquiries from many different places. Mostly networking for me and referrals.
Did you say networking? Nice. I definitely want to ask you about that as well. But before we get into networking, so you were doing Google Street View photography, going around knocking on doors, seeing if businesses, kind of introducing them to the whole concept of Google My Business listings. And then you got into Matterport basically because of Google Street View. I mean, you realized that Matterport
because
could
they
do
were
that
showing,
for you.
Yeah, because they were demonstrating Matterport. As long, it's like a marketplace, and all of the providers come along. There's about 200 of us come from across the world to the Google Street View Summit, and we hear about what other Google Trusted Photographers have been doing, and we see what the latest tech is, and if we're lucky we get a discount. And Metaport was one of those. So I found out about it, and I said, look, it looks to me like it's for estate agents, it's for property, and that's what people are using it for. I don't know how it's going to satisfy the needs of my clients, my location-based businesses. And then Kurt told me that they were going to put it into beta to publish onto Google Street View. And I said, well, that sounds brilliant, because then I've got even more for my location-based businesses. I can offer them funky little models, which are great for their marketing, loads of photos, the interactivity, we can put videos inside them, etc. And they get the bonus of the improved local SEO.
Yeah. Did you find that businesses that you went ahead and used Matterport to get the the scan positions up to Google using Google Street View and all that? Did those businesses take any advantage of the 3D aspect, like the Matterport model? Are they using that in their landing pages or anything like that, or is it mostly using? Yeah. There's a good one. Eyes on St Albans. That's a really good local business that has done. Yeah. And it's really improved because, while you can embed Google Street View into your website, having your 3D virtual tour on there is really compelling for people. It's fun to use and it's really cool. So people stay longer and click more, which is what you want on your website to improve your SEO as well. You get to become a bit of an expert in all sorts of things when you become a Google Trusted Photographer. Is that something that Google still requires for Google Street View photographers, or can anybody with a 360 camera today go ahead and do that? You can qualify. It's not as hard as it used to be. I mean, we used to have access to actual Street View via their back end, and now it's delivered by third-party providers like Go Through, or you directly, if you've got a Matterport, you can just post them directly on there. And with Go Through or other third-party companies, can you, I guess, align or sync the Google Street View photos from the street itself so that people can walk their way into storefronts?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can't link it directly to the existing Google Street View, but it will link over time. It kind of gets it. It understands where it is.
Just takes a bit of time with the Google algorithm. Yeah.
Exactly. So if you put it really close, I usually check out where is the nearest node, if you will, and then I put my first one closest to that, and then hopefully over time it links up. We can also create blue line as well, so replace or update or add new Google Street View.
So I mean, I would assume the same thing is true for Matterport, that if you look and check kind of where that nearest position is that scans the little X in the Google Street View is outside the store that you're scanning, you just kind of scan your way out and try and get as close to that as possible. And with time, it should align and work itself out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Good tip. I wasn't sure if that was confirmed with with Google or not. I know it's just kind of up to Google and their algorithms and how they figure all that stuff out. And there's really not much.
It's not. I don't guarantee it.
Yeah.
But the power for it is having the panoramas on their Google My Business listings. That's where they get loads of views.
Good. Okay, so you got Matterport now, and you're doing Google Street View. Are you still using traditional photography, your camera and setup and whatnot to do some Google Street View and Matterport to do other Google Street View? What's the difference? How do you decide when to use what?
That really is up to the client. I've got a large automotive client, and they don't want Matterport.
Mm-hmm.
They're not interested in it. They just want to Google Street View because that was what I was providing before, and they're happy with that. Actually, Matterport doesn't work very well with cars. The shiny surface leaves them all looking a bit raggy. So they're happy with that. And now I don't have to do the stitching. We used to use a fisheye lens and a panoramic head. And now I use the Z1, the Z1.
Yeah. So now you have to run away.
Yeah, I just have to hide. Yourself. Yeah, exactly. Crouching down behind
Crouch
things.
behind the car.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
You've seen me, right?
Good. So what else? You've gotten into Matterport, and you're doing Google Street View still with Matterport, but Matterport does open up other doors outside of Google Street View that you can use it for other things. Are you doing anything else with Matterport other than Google Street View?
Oh, yes. All sorts of things. Yes, it's really my latest and greatest and most amazing thing that I'm enjoying at the moment is the galleries.
Okay.
So particularly, although there's been a few more since, I started shooting the mall galleries in London, not far from the Queen's House, and they have regular Royal Society exhibitions. You can imagine how much time, effort, energy, and money is spent setting up these exhibitions that run for, a couple of weeks, and then it all comes down again. So if we capture it with Metaport, then they can continue having that artwork out there for sale to a much wider audience. It's fantastic. And other individual artists who rent the space have also been sort of jumping on the bandwagon because that's a lot of time, effort, and energy. This one lady had her exhibition up for 4 days. There's only so many people that can come and visit and appreciate the artwork in 4 days. But now she's got it on there forever, and we've tagged it all up so they can find out more about the artwork, see how much it is, and even click through to buy it.
Yeah, you can do the whole e-commerce process and whatnot right through the Matterport model if you really wanted to. That's great. That's actually a brilliant use case. I love that. So galleries, like you said, these artists spend so much time and energy putting together these galleries, and they're taken down after a couple of weeks, basically. And this just allows them to live on indefinitely, as long as the artist chooses. Basically, they're not limited by the space, the gallery itself. That's great. Cool. How did you go from Google Street View to galleries? What was that transition like?
I don't know if there's a transition. It's just a different job, really.
Did you pitch them Google Street View and for the gallery, or was it something else completely?
Oh no, this was a referral from another MSP.
Okay, well, there you go.
They had their client was exhibiting in the space, and they're in Scotland. So they give me a call and said, can you go and shoot that for us? And I was like, yeah, of course. And then the more galleries talked to me, and they said, well, we really like that. We've got some things that we might like doing, and so it just went on from there.
It's interesting. They all the galleries kind of see and what the other galleries are doing and say, oh, that looks like a good idea. And it just kind of, once you get the first job, then the rest is a little bit easier to sell.
Exactly. Right? Yeah.
Cool. Good. So you're basically doing all of this. It's not like you're going in one direction. You're doing Google Street View for businesses. You're doing galleries now, it sounds like. Anything else where you've taken Matterport and said this is good to use that you've like proactively or through the network that
schools? I've done schools. That's really good with the third-party overlay. It's like a Zoom call within the models.
Okay, interesting. I didn't realize schools were using that.
Yeah,
so,
and nurseries, particularly because of the pandemic.
Yeah,
they didn't want people coming in. They've still got kids in there, some children in there, but they still need to move forward with recruiting somehow. So they can do it like that. There's a system that I use where the head teacher can show them through the different models that I've created of the key areas, a sample classroom, the gym, the main hall, all the key areas.
The new
so
teachers.
They've got all of those. And then the teacher can actually broadcast out to like 50 computers locally all in one time.
Interesting.
And, as if they were walking around with the teacher. So the head teacher says, this is where we do this, and they can ask questions as well.
So they can do guided tours through the campus without actually being on campus. That's very cool. So that when kids do go back, I mean, a lot of them, I know my kids are back now in school, they can be more familiar with the space.
Yeah.
No, that's great. I mean, that's also, a great use case. I think familiarizing yourself with the space, that's part of it, right? That's a huge part of it. That's why it's done so well in real estate. Cool. So how long have you been doing galleries and schools and?
Well, since the pandemic, really.
Galleries also? Yeah. I mean, schools, yes. Yeah. Galleries also, basically they did it.
Because they couldn't open. They couldn't open, could they?
I see. Okay. So that was the main.
So they needed to find a way to show.
So initially it started with the pandemic and being able to bring people in virtually and have artists still kind of use their space to set up. And you're saying now it's kind of morphed into, we'll still do it even though we can open our doors, but this allows us to just keep it open for forever. The same gallery, you can, same exhibit, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And then that makes their website more Google friendly as well, because people stay on there longer and click more. So it's a win-win. Yeah, exactly. So they can actually have, I mean, they're replicating their own space, many times. Every time it's like a pop-up shop where you can just set it up, scan it, and then have it indefinitely after you've, torn it down and moved on. And that's interesting because that could potentially lead, I would imagine someone's going to do this for gallery where it's just virtual, right? Why pay rent where I can just have all my artists present virtually, do a pop-up shop out of some, warehouse, tear it down the next day, and then move on, and everything is just virtual. Or really move it up. That would be it's hard work putting up an exhibition.
Exactly. So we did have a couple questions come in, so I just want to take a second and see if we have anything for you here, Joe. By the way, just a reminder, if you can put all the questions in through the Q&A panel and not the chat panel, that'll be very helpful, just so we can have everything in one place. Here's a really interesting one. I don't know how into this you've gotten into NFTs or anything like that. Is there any link to NFTs for Matterport for artists? Have you heard of the galleries doing anything with NFTs?
No, I haven't.
So it looks like traditional galleries are not looking into that. I do know if you're interested, an artist called Alexa Mead. We've done some work with her. She's put out some NFTs, and it's very interesting. So basically, it's 100%, virtual art that you can buy Basically, that's all it is. And just have your little JPEG of this thing, and it's worth a lot of money. That's it. You don't actually have a real, what we consider something you can put on your wall. It's just this basically a JPEG of whatever. It could be an animated GIF in her case. So, but yeah, Alexami has done a couple things. She had a gallery, really, really cool. If you haven't checked it out, it's called something Winter Wonderland, I think. Check out if you do Winter Wonderland Matterport, I think that'll get in Google, so just search for that. I think that'll get you to the gallery page on our website where you can go through the gallery. Very, very neat. The entire exhibit is painted, floors, ceiling, all of it, walls. She's a very unique artist.
Wow.
So very, very cool for anybody who's interested in that. So I want to, I guess, take a little step back. You know what? No, before we do that, let's talk a little bit about your network. Something that I think is super, super important. And I don't know how many people are really taking full advantage of building their network, and maybe they don't know how to get started with that. How would you recommend? I know you have a really broad and well set network of MSPs, Metaport service partners, and photographers. How did you get to know them? Or how did you build that? Was it through Moog? For anybody who's not familiar, Moog is the Matterport official user group on Facebook. A good place to at least get started with building a network.
So various, really. Again, I just get out there and I chat to people. Lots of people on Moog, Google, the Google Street View Summit, actually. So like Chris Hickman and Pablo Zimbron and my pals, they actually stayed here when the Google Street View Summit was in London, which was very exciting. And then from there, I met a load of other MSPs, but mostly in the States and other parts of the world. There weren't that many of us from the UK there, to be fair. And then, yes, Facebook, the Facebook groups. And then was one particular company who was looking for a lot of MSPs locally in the UK. They wanted a broad amount of them to cover particular jobs that they had going. So they called us all in for a meet-up in London. So I met a load of them then. And we sometimes go out on jobs together when there's a large project. And we literally met on Friday, in fact. I don't know if anything listening, but we had a good night out in London.
So it's not all just business. There's some fun times that you guys get together and just hang out and talk about scanning models, I'm guessing.
Talk about some of the issues, share solutions, use cases, and what have you been up to, get ideas and inspiration. Have a laugh.
That's great. That's great. I mean, I know you said through your network you were able to get the first job scanning the gallery, which led to many more jobs scanning other galleries as well. And I'm guessing the same gallery again. It's just it repeats with every exhibit, with every artist that comes and puts their work up. They need another scan. Exactly. So that's cool. Okay, so basically, bottom line is get out there. Start talking to people. Don't be shy. Google Street View has summits, but other, photography niches also do their own summits and things like that. So,
and local networking. Whichever town you're in, they'll have networking groups. Mm-hmm. You just go along and go on to some breakfast networking. Because you want to get in touch with the local community. And tomorrow night, I'm going out to a local award thing. It's called the Woohoos. It's a St Albans businesses thing. So there'll be, I don't know, a few hundred people there having a dinner, celebrating successes. Just talking to people.
That's great. That's
And
great.
then once they know you, like you, and trust you, they start giving you work if you're giving them work. It's kind of
what goes around comes around, I guess. So basically is that what you would recommend, is not only putting yourself out there to get the network, but also pitching yourself to businesses that could potentially be outside your, geography or something like that, so you can work with others in those further locations to expand the network? Does that make any sense at all, or am I just completely out of?
Yeah, I mean, my MSP network is really valuable. We have a WhatsApp group. We're always chatting on there. Someone will get stuck on a job. Oh my God, my camera's doing this. Anyone got any idea what I can do with it? We sort of help each other and pass jobs. If I get a job way too far away from me, I'm just going to reach out to someone and say, look, can you go and do it for me? Particularly now when travel isn't really the way forward at the moment.
Travel is less ideal. How do you find those jobs? Do they just come to you because your name is out there? You've done things like Westminster Abbey. How do those clients that are kind of far away, how do they come to you? How do they find you?
Just normally word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've had all sorts. So existing clients, I did a showroom for one client. They use a marketing agency. So I don't just do virtual tours. I'm a photographer. So I have a little studio here, and I do headshots here and product shoots. And I go out and do plain photography for websites and team photos, etc. So that marketing agent saw that I provided all these services, and they had another client that they needed it for, so they asked me to go and do work for them. So it varies. It's I've got a list of like where all my referrals come from, but it's just the phone. Now I've been in business 10 years in February, so the phone people. I'm established. It was hard at the beginning. And I wouldn't suggest that anybody buys a Matterport and makes a business out of it.
So so that brings up a good question. What would your recommendation be? To have Matterport just as like another tool in your toolbox? And you're basically a photographer. You're doing Google Street View and headshots well before Matterport came along. And this is just another revenue stream.
Yeah. It's going to be hard because people don't know what it is.
Yeah.
They don't know what to do with it, even once they've got it, even if they were lit up and they thought, oh, yeah, that's not too expensive. I'll have that. And then you kind of go in and you go, 3 months later, how's that going? Is it embedded on your website? Is it what? Oh, I don't know who does my website.
So they get excited by it, but then they have a hard time implementing it.
You share the link. Yeah. So I've written a nice big blog about what sort of things you can do with your Matterport virtual tour.
Yeah. You're only not.
And I send that out to them and I say, look, you should be taking advantage of your investment. You should be working it.
And that's the same goes with Google Street View, right? You were saying it's not just getting those panels and putting them in your Google My Business listing. You have to be a lot more proactive about it.
On your Google My Business,
Google My
Business, you have to use it. Yeah, that's really important. I mean, if you're a location-based business, definitely have Google Street View inside, would be my advice. But post to it every day, add photos, and then Google will love you and show you to more people and you'll get more customers.
With that said, what would your recommendation be for someone who's not as familiar with something like Google Street View and wants to take that on as well as Matterport? They've got either a Matterport camera or they've got their cell phone. I mean, I know somebody who's doing real estate photography with a cell phone, or they have a 360 camera like the Ricoh Z1 that you have as well. So if they've got that, they've got the tools to kind of get started, and they're getting into Matterport. But they also want to venture and find other things, like you started with Google Street View and found Matterport. Others are finding Matterport, but then they can get into Google Street View and the other way and do other things. So for that person, what would your recommendation be how should they go and pitch Google Street View to clients, to these businesses? What do they need to know?
It depends what the business is.
Okay.
So,
So right now, with the pandemic, I think a lot of restaurants are struggling. Is that something that can benefit them? A lot of people are now ordering from restaurants online. Does it benefit them to have that Google My Business listing at all, or is that?
I definitely have the Google My Business listing.
Yeah,
absolutely. Every business should have a Google My Business listing. In a pandemic, when people can't come inside, not necessarily Google Street View, but Google Street View will elevate the listing. Any interaction you make with it. I would have your Google My Business listing. If you have Matterport and you don't know about Google Street View inside, and you don't know about Google My Business, you need to find out about it because it's all part of the same thing. So you really need to have expertise in these things. And it's not hard.
Yeah.
Google makes it easy for you. There's lots of info online. And the more people that know about it, the better, really. Because the more people understand that, you've got to get your reviews on there, you've got to put your messaging on. If you're a restaurant, people will be messaging you. I've got a couple of businesses and I manage their pages. They're always getting messages. There's a pub, the Hollybush, and they say, "Oh, hi, have you got any availability for Sunday lunch?" And he comes straight back and he goes, "Oh yeah, I've got one at 3. I'll book you in." Boom, done.
So that's interesting. I never thought of it myself to go through a Google My Business listing to see if I can make a reservation.
It's right up there now. When you find if you go onto Google Maps and you click on a business there, it straight away it says, "Do you want to chat with this business?" If they've got messaging turned on, obviously, and so you can literally just chat with them. The guy I said eyes on St Albans, all the messages come through there. He's chatting with people all day, making eye appointments.
So if you've got a business that is actually public facing, not like warehouses back in nowhere, but a public facing business, you need to have Google My Business listing and you need to have messaging turned on.
Yeah.
That's like step one.
At the very least.
At the very least.
Yeah. You need to put your banner up there, your logo, fill out all your information, make sure your information is correct, write something, that describes your business perfectly to your perfect customer, so that when they get there, they're going to know you're talking to them. And put plenty of pictures up there, because pictures tell people instantly. Photography is key.
So how would Matterport fit into that by basically capturing the store itself? And
so basically
quickly
make a 3D model, and then once you've got it, you can attach once you're a Google Trusted Photographer, you attach your account to it and you can just literally publish it. And because the Matterport, it makes it much more simple than the old days when we had to create the individual shots, stitch them together, upload them, plot them, do what we call moderate, put them in the right direction, join them in a sensible order. That's everything that we did for Westminster Abbey, actually.
Wow.
Back in 2015, 175 panos.
Wow.
But now it's as simple as click a button. I mean, you do get the blurry hexagons in it, but people don't look up and down. As long as they can see where they're going.
Yeah,
right and left.
Not as
fine.
Important unless you're in Westminster Abbey, then you want.
Yeah, when you have to have the apex and the nadir beautifully stitched in.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Let's. We do have more questions coming in, so let me address some of these. See what we've got here. Okay. So Oliver wrote, at the moment you read a lot about the problems with adding Matterport to Google. Have you heard of it? Have you heard of the problems? And is it a technical problem, or is it a compatibility, or is Google currently having a problem? Have you had?
Is that one? Oh, I've read a lot about problems with adding Matterport. I haven't noticed that being an issue.
I haven't heard of of the problems from Matterport uploading to Google Street View. So I'm not really sure what you're referring to, Oliver.
There was, like, way back when it was in beta, like, you would have to, like, you thought you'd done it and then it didn't turn up.
Okay. And then you could just kind of do it again and it would show up, right? I mean, that was basically the workaround. I think I remember that. But I have not heard of anything now happening that's causing. I can't remember the last one
I published, or how long ago it was, but I don't recall an issue.
Okay. Sorry, Oliver. May want to reach out to support team and see if they can help with that, if it is a Matterport related issue. Michael asks, will you show us your workflow online? Are you referring to the Google Street View workflow? We can certainly talk about that. So when you do a Google Street View with Matterport, what's your process? Are you still knocking on doors, or do you get enough incoming work that you don't need to go out proactively looking for it?
Yeah, I get incoming.
Okay. So at this point, you're dealing, you've got a bunch of work coming in. If it is a, Google Street View or gallery or something like that, what is your process? You go and you talk with the client. What do you do? How do you work that out?
They call me. I book a time. It's great for both of us. I put them in my Google Calendar. They know that I'm coming. Then I do a quote. Actually, on the system, I quote first. They approve the quote. When they've approved the quote, I put the time in that we've agreed. I put them in there. They know I'm coming. I really should ring them just the day before, but mostly it's fine. We all know that we're coming. If they're brand new to it, I will send them a prep sheet because they don't often know that it's a full 360. So anyway, I turn up. I encourage them not to be there and to have it photo ready. Yeah.
Everything cleaned up as much as possible.
Yeah. And I'm not there to dress it.
Yeah.
I'm just a photographer.
It's not your
job. You want the set dresser? You can pay for one. I can arrange one, but that's not my job. Which did happen with one client. Just like, it looks awful. I'm like, it's your place. You should have thought of that before you got the photographer to come in. So you turn up. I encourage them just to leave. I tell them that I'm hiding myself. And it will capture you if you're in it. And we talk about, perhaps I'll move the bins. I take all the panels, I upload it as I'm leaving, using my phone to tether. And usually by the time I get back, it's definitely processing, and it may have come out even depending on, how busy the servers are. And then once it's come out, I share it with the client. I make sure that they're happy with the imagery. And then I say, right, as long as you're happy with the way it looks now, I'm going to upload it to Google, and I publish it to Google. Depends on what they've ordered. I might then do a video walkthrough in there.
Mm-hmm.
I might snapshot a load of photos out of it and upload it to my gallery system. So I send them the embed code, the link to the virtual tour, the link to the gallery, and usually we transfer them the GIFs, download the GIFs. So
you're using Matterport to capture all of that at once, basically. You get them the photos based off of the Matterport capture. You get them the Google Street View based off the Matterport capture. You get them the video, run through based off the Matterport capture. Cool. So that makes it.
And if they want that as a separate MP4, for example, I just screen record. I just press play and screen record it, and then they got a little video they can share as well, which is separate a little bit. But content is king, isn't it? Content
definitely is very important, and the more businesses understand that, the better they're off. Cool. I hope that answers the workflow question, Michael. If you have a follow-up, you can definitely let me know. Oliver asks, Joe, is it easy to win new customers through Matterport or Google these days? What is the percent figure for Matterport and the Google of your orders? So how much are you doing Matterport versus just Google?
I don't do very many just Google. Percentage would be hard because it kind of fluctuates. You know, if the automotive buyout is actually an American company, and if they buy out another dealership, they might have 20. Then they're just going to want Google. So I'll just take Z1. But other ones individually, it depends on the person. I mean, some things relate to the business, but it depends on the person, how much they understand, how much they want it, the value that they see in it. So you have to try and work out what is the value to this person. You can only do that by chatting with them. Mm-hmm. I can try and influence it by telling them all the great stuff. But a lot of people don't even know what SEO means. So I think that's the main thing. But marketing, it's a marketing tool mostly.
How did you market Google Street View to these businesses now you said you've got a lot of incoming business, but prior to that, you had to build and work and market. How do you market something like SEO to someone who, is selling pastries? I mean,
yeah, you just keep talking about it. And I have a client, Loafing, locally. They hire me for photography, for their website, for their social media, and they know that I do Matterport, so they hired me to do a Matterport as well. So it was really quite cool. And they didn't really know what it was, and they still don't really know what it is, but they know me well enough that when I say it's really good for you, they're going to believe me because, it's a local business and I do a lot of networking, so I know them quite well.
Yeah.
I haven't been here for 10 years doing this because it doesn't work, basically, I suppose.
You said that that you help some of the My Business listings with their, online messaging and whatnot. Is that something that you've put out either in some kind of format, whether it's like a blog talking about it or a couple of YouTube videos and how you do it and why it's important?
Google My Business. Yeah, there's blogs on my there's at least a couple of them on there because it changes so often as well. So, it's not long before they've changed the look of it and they've moved features and stuff. So I think there was one was it 2020? There might have been one that I did. I can't remember if it was this year. It might have been this year. Well, it's 2020. I had a lot of time on my hands. But yeah, have a look on the news posts on my website, basically. You can, and there's stuff about being a Google trusted photographer as well. I've done all sorts of things on there.
So if you're going to get into,
might find useful.
Yeah, if you're going to get into Google Street View photography, you definitely want to become a Google trusted photographer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's not very hard these days. I think you have to upload 20 panoramas or something ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Not that I've got any gripes that I used to get so many turned down by the moderators. Mm-hmm. Oh, you've missed blurring someone's faint reflection in a car window.
Was that all done
over again?
Was that all done manually in the past?
Yeah.
Now it's all pretty much automated.
Yeah, and now it recognizes it. Although some of the things it recognizes as a face is interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I've noticed that too.
Better safe than sorry, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose. All right. So Elizabeth has a great question. Actually, this is something that I think is very challenging for most. How did you acquire your first client?
Oh gosh, who was my first client? Well, I had to do lots of tests. I had to do sample ones anyway. So I went down to my local pub and I asked the landlord if I could do it in there. And they said, yeah, that's fine. It wasn't very busy. I think it was a rainy Wednesday afternoon. And I did Google Street View inside the Rose and Crown in Sandridge, which I should have a look. Actually, I haven't thought about that for years. I should see how many views it's got on it now. So I published that.
So your first, I mean, it wasn't, I don't know if you consider them a client. That wasn't really a paying job, right? Because you just went in there and said, hey, can I do this?
Yeah, but then I had an example.
It gives you an example. It shows other people that you've got experience under your belt, and
yeah,
got it. That makes sense.
Who was my first paying client? Jesus, a long time ago. I'd have to look it up. But then I was quite lucky after that. I worked with a major tire company in the UK, and they had hundreds of. We refurbished hundreds of their centres. They shot from Inverness down to Penzance, and lots and lots and lots and lots of towns in between. So that kept me busy for quite a while. And then once you've started working with some big names, you can say,
they talk, they recommend, I really like the gallery idea and having that. That's just kind of resonates with me. For anybody who's looking into getting into that, would you say approach the gallery with the idea or the artist that's putting up their stuff?
The gallery.
The gallery?
It depends. I suppose it depends on the setup, but for my purposes, the more galleries sells art on behalf of artists. Sorry. So, for example, what's up at the moment is the Royal Society of Oil Painters. Bear with me. And so within that, there's lots and lots of different artists. But if it's a smaller gallery, well, even so, smaller gallery might be selling many different artists. So you speak to the gallery, I reckon.
Got it.
Museums as well, I've done some museums. But that's a different thing, really.
Entire museums or just exhibits within a museum?
Well, the local one was the entire museum, but it's not very big.
Okay.
But I wouldn't mind getting into a bigger. I'm not shy of doing a really big space. Conference centre, as conference centres I've done.
Yeah. How is the museum using the Matterport that you scanned for them?
Well, they were very keen to use it in lockdown, so people could still, learn about that particular town. And it's a really good exhibition, actually, really fun. And they put in some interactivity. They put some meta tags in there.
Interesting. So I guess outside of lockdown, lots of places that depend on tourism would, like the city itself, would benefit from having Matterport models of different parts of the city that are, like very attractive to tourists.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think lots of people come up with the reason for not having it because then people won't come. But actually, I think the reverse is true because they didn't know about it. And while a virtual tour is amazing, obviously, I think it's amazing, that you can look around, it's not exactly like being there.
Yeah.
You only get that experience from being in a place, don't you?
So it just helps anyone who's excited about seeing Westminster, seeing it, the Google Street View panels, as amazing as they are of it, is not going to make them not want to go visit the real thing.
No, it's
just the opposite.
In fact, the opposite. It's going to remind them of it so much because once you've experienced a virtual tour, that's ingrained, right?
Yeah.
You remember you've seen that place because there's not that many of them.
Yeah, exactly. That's interesting. So I wonder if photographers can approach municipalities and cities that have a lot of tourists come and say, hey, we need to make some virtual tours of these locations.
Yeah.
To get
to make it memorable for people online.
Memorable, yeah. People who have been there can go back and revisit it. And what a lot of people don't know is that it doesn't end with just the Matterport model. I mean, there's a whole infrastructure of partners who are doing phenomenal things. These SDK partners, they can do a complete audio tour through a Matterport model, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I love all of that. I love all the whistles and bells and the amazing things that you can do. I'm actually quite happy just taking the pictures and delivering that first part, because the rest of it is such a steep curve, to be fair. That if people know what they want, we can pretty much do anything, right? And if they come to us and they want it and they know what it is, that's great. But it's, once you're doing one thing, it's better to just keep doing that same thing, like delivering the virtual tour.
Yeah.
It'll come, I'm sure, because here we are now with 3D virtual tours, which are amazing and easy to use. Where before we were like, oh yes, it's Google Street View, which is a little bit sort of stilted in comparison, isn't it?
All right, we have a couple more questions. I do want to get through these. We have a few minutes left, so let's see what we can do here. Can you increase the density of a point cloud capture, I think, by the BLK or the Matterport camera? Can you increase the density of a point cloud? As long as you increase the density of the scans, the number of scans that you have, you can increase the density of the point cloud. To get the highest density point cloud, Caesar, Matterport does have the ability of, you can buy a Matter Pack that has a higher density point cloud than what you just get through Showcase. And I don't know how available it is. If it might still be in beta, but you can definitely, reach out to us outside of this. E57 files are like the highest density point cloud. So if point cloud is what you're looking for, the E57 is the way to go, and we should be able to get you that. Just not sure how yet. We're still working on it. I think it's in beta. Okay. Do Matterport tours get recognized on Street View with blue line? I don't think so. Do you know about that? No,
it's separate. Blue line is actual Google Street View, and Google Street View inside is what you deliver. So the difference ultimately is that one is not attached to Google My Business listing. One is, and if it's attached to your Google My Business listing, it's Google Street View inside. And if you just post it using Go Through, for example, there's the option to add it as a blue line, and that just has like a street so that it knows whereabouts it is starting geographically. And then you can add, I've done my local park round. I've done Hatfield House is a big house down the road. Queen Elizabeth I actually found out she was queen. And they have big grounds, obviously. And they wanted to extend Google Street View from the gate up through the car park, round past the old palace, into the courtyard, round the park, into the front of the house, and then round to the back of the garden. So I created that as Google Street View, as a blue line. But it's not attached to Hatfield House Google My Business listing.
Got it. Great. So difference between Google My Business listing, Google Street View, which you're not going to get a Matterport model. It's not a 3D. You get just the 360 panos that go up to Google. And when you click on that little yellow person in the corner, you can see the circles, right, indicating that there is a photograph here. There is a.
That's Google Street View inside.
That's the Google Street View inside.
You see those? They can be linked together or individual. If they're linked together, it's Google Street View inside. And then so when you hover Pegman over, you see the dots in sort of inside a building on the map.
Yeah.
Then that's it inside, and the blue line is just Google Street View.
Got it. Okay, cool. John asks, planning to retire from North Carolina State in January and just purchased my own Pro 2 camera. Will be applying to become a capture technician soon. nervous about a change, but would love to hear from people who have already taken the plunge. That's a really good question. I'm not sure if we're the best to answer that, but I would recommend checking out Moog, which is Matterport, M-O-U-G, Matterport Official User Group on Facebook. I'm sure a lot of people on there are probably in the same situation, and you can get to know them and their experiences. And let's see, what else do we have here? When shooting the tour with Matterport Pro 2 camera, some of the objects in the shots turned out to have blurry or erased edges. Have you ever had that problem?
Yeah, they get like nibbles, don't they?
Yeah.
Which is a pain, actually, when you do snapshots out of it, because I spend hours in Photoshop fixing those.
Yeah. Is that basically your current workaround is just kind of trying to touch them up in Photoshop?
If I can't do anything about the model, because the model is the model.
Yeah.
And I think generally people don't see it because they're looking at the bigger picture. You know, they're looking at
they're looking at it from a distance.
But if you've taken a snapshot and you've got a photo and people are going to be using that, it does. So I just fix it in Photoshop.
Got it. So,
or if it's really bad, I don't use it.
Yeah, when you extract the photos, the 2D photos to give them as a 2D image, you'll go through and fix them. There's clearly nothing that can be done.
Yeah, I don't use them. Actually, I don't use them straight out of the snapshot either, because they're not really ready for client to use. So I put them. My workflow there is Lightroom, and then I process them in Lightroom overall, and I pull them out if they need to for detailed editing in Photoshop.
You'll capture all the snapshots in Workshop, download everything, bring everything into Lightroom, and then touch everything up as needed. Makes sense. So those little jaggy bits on edges and sometimes banisters, things like that, is just an inherent issue with how the camera is built. It's if you've done panorama photography, you know about the nodal point or pupil entry point. That's where you want to be when you're kind of panning. And because of the Matterport Pro 2 camera has, a lens going straight, one going up, one going down, they don't align on that point. And so we need to use a lot of depth data in order to properly align. And when there isn't as much depth data as there should be or can be, then we might run into problems. So that's what's going on there. With that said, unfortunately, I didn't get to all of the questions. Thank you very, very much for everybody who did ask the questions. We'll try and get those answered after the webinar and get them to you via email or something. We'll try and figure it out. But for now, we are at the end of the webinar. Joe, thank you so much for joining me and spending this hour.
Welcome.
I hope everybody got something out of it. Joe, your experience with Google Street View is insane, and I love that you've done so many different things with Matterport, and I hope that shows everybody that it's not just real estate. So
not by a long chalk.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again. And we will see you in the next webinar happening, I believe, January 5th, at least next Shop Talk webinar. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.